What's going on, guys? Welcome to episode 28 of the Roots of Success podcast. I am your host, Nate the Great Peterman, and today we have a very, very special guest. I like to call him the master, the guru connector, to say the least. My guy, Robert Youngblood, YB. What's going on, brother?
Peace and blessings, man. Hey, glad to be in your presence, man. You are definitely got things cooking, and I'm excited about being here with you.
No, I appreciate that, man. I'm definitely excited for the value that you're about to drop. And for some of those that might be wondering, like, man, YB, who is this guy? That's quite a name. I'll give a little bit of a brief intro. YB is a connector, consultant, and speaker who empowers revenue generators to increase their visibility, credibility, and profitability. As the Chief Connecting Officer and LinkedIn Locksmith of YB Connects LLC, he works with business owners, entrepreneurs, sales professionals, and speakers to attract their ideal clients using LinkedIn and referral marketing strategies. Wow, man, that sounds incredible.
Yeah.
Man, so YB, sort of go in depth a little bit, man. Sort of tell us, where you're from, sort of a little bit about your background, how you grew up, and where you sort of, got to where you're at today, man.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a native of Bronx, New York, and I grew up in a single-parent home. My dad was actually murdered when I was 2. And I often start off every conversation that I have with that because I want people to recognize that you're going to go through adversity, but there's life after the adversity. There's life after the struggle. And so as a result of growing up without my father, I became a compassionate connector. When I graduated from high school, I had the opportunity to work for Def Jam as a street team rep. And so literally I was in the streets of New York, passing out flyers, connecting with people, not knowing that would lead to a career in being a connector. When I got to college, I transitioned to Virginia Union, which is in Richmond, Virginia. And when I transitioned there, I was on street team on the college level, and I was responsible for doing some of the same things I did on the streets of New York, handing out flyers and tapes and posters and bringing artists on the yard. But like I said, I still didn't know that would lead to a career in marketing. And so it wasn't until I graduated from college in 2004 that I started my first direct sales business. I did some work with the Amway Corporation, and then I got into nonprofit work where I was doing outreach in the communities of Central Virginia. And in 2012, about 6 years ago, the nonprofit organization I was working with, they laid me off. And I basically, that's what prompted me to start YB Connects. And I'm so grateful for that layoff, because had I still been working for that organization today, I wouldn't be on this call with you, and I wouldn't have connected with people like ET. So I'm just thankful for the adversity, because it's through the adversity that you learn more about yourself, and then there's life beyond the adversity.
No, that's so true. Were you always one of those types of, I don't know, of course, with what it is that you do now and doing stuff with like Def Jam and everything, it seems as if maybe early on, did you notice any like certain traits early on in your life that you were just like always maybe a people person? Maybe you weren't always a people person.
Yeah, I was always a people person, man. I was always someone who, was in love with people. I didn't take the animal assessment then, but I was definitely like just focused on people, loving people, being friendly. But what I realized was I was also a risk taker. I knew that to be successful, I had to take some risks. I didn't want to play it safe. Similar like my mom. My mom, plays it safe. Even some of the people I hung out with in the neighborhood, they never wanted to leave the block. And I realized that I needed to be able to expand my horizon and go beyond where I was, so I can, see more of the world. And so I think one of the traits that has helped me is the fact that I'm willing to take risk. And even as an entrepreneur now, that's one of the keys that, helps us to be successful is our willingness to take risks. Now, it's funny because when I started in college, one of the areas of study was finance. And so the first lesson that we learned in finance is that the greater the risk, the greater the reward, right? However, the greater the risk, also the greater the struggle as well. right? And so one of the traits that I started to develop was that being a risk taker, also being a visionary, seeing bigger than what others could see, right? Often seeing opportunities before other people saw opportunities. And I just had to work on getting myself together so I could be able to seize those opportunities. I remember when I was a senior in high school, I had a serious case of senioritis. And there was a gentleman who came in and talked to us about this internship opportunity with an organization called Inroads.
Okay.
And at that time, I was just like, whatever, man, I'm not interested. But during the summer, I found out that some of the guys that I went to high school with took advantage of the opportunity. They were making buku dollars on Wall Street. And so when I got to college, my freshman year, I realized that Inroads didn't disappear because I didn't join, right? You know, how silly of me to think that I would be the one that would stop them from growing. But in any case, I ended up taking advantage of the opportunity. I seized the opportunity. I applied. And I was able to get accepted into the program the summer of my sophomore year. And that led to some other great things that took place. So I would say being a risk taker, being a visionary, and seeing opportunities where, you know, other people may not see it have been traits that I've been developing for over 20 years.
Mm. No, that's so true. Definitely, you know, with taking risks, especially when you're young too. Even myself, like being 22 years old, I tell people like that a lot because I get messages, of course, a lot on Instagram asking about like, hey man, how'd you start? How can I start? How did you do it? And I'm just like, man, take risks. Like
Yeah.
if you got to risk it all, I mean, there's been times where I've flown to cities and I mean, hey, I didn't know if I was getting out of the city. You know, I had to literally just, you know, make, you know, money to actually get a plane ticket home to eat, you know, but like you said, it's all about taking those risks. And I totally agree. So let me ask you this, YB. So growing up in New York, I mean, the Bronx, holy cow. I mean, you're talking about like the heart of New York, right? So with you, you know, being involved with like the marketing and everything, I'm sure you've seen over the years how it's really shifted, right? Like obviously CDs and everything just aren't necessarily a thing anymore compared to, you know, like audios and stuff with these, you know, smartphones we have nowadays. So do you think it's harder today to maybe promote compared to what it was whenever you did? Or maybe it was, you know, whenever you were doing it? What's sort of like the differences that you sort of see there?
Yeah, I think I think it's harder for those who don't understand the foundation of marketing, right? And promotion. I mean, at the end of the day, it's all people, right? And people do business with those that they know, like, and trust. And that's foundation, whether we have technology or not, right? So if I met you in the street, you're not just probably going to talk to me off the top if you don't trust me. So I think what's important is that people understand the foundation, and then they're able to apply it online and offline. I think it's easier now though, because you know with marketing you can reach so many more people through social media than you could if you were doing it hardcore like in the street. You know, if I'm on the corner of 42nd and 8th Avenue and I'm pushing I'm promoting an artist or I'm promoting a product, I'm not on Wall Street. You feel what I'm saying? So I can't be in multiple places at once. But in social media, you could be in multiple places, multiple platforms, in front of multiple people at one time at the push of a button. So I think it's simpler now. But if a person doesn't understand the importance of building those know, like, and trust relationships, then it is difficult to get anything into somebody's hands, right? You know, so I think the key for most people, especially if they're just getting started, is to understand the importance of building know, like, and trust relationships so that they can identify a person's need and share their product with them and eventually, you know, turn them into a customer if that person is interested.
No, that's so true. Let me ask you this, right?
Yeah.
So, of course, with the Bronx and New York being a, you know, one of the biggest cities, of course there is out there, right?
Yeah.
Let's sort of transition it a little bit more so towards a smaller city, right? Because me, I'm from a town called Chambersburg, Pennsylvania, and it's not
Okay.
necessarily one of, you know, like a city. You know, it's a town, right? It's small. It's not as populated and like New York is, or like Miami or some Los Angeles. So let's say, you know, if you would have been in a town sort of like where I was growing up, where there's farmlands and everything like that, compared to an actual city, how would you and it doesn't have to relate, with promoting or anything like that, but maybe
Right.
just connecting or getting connected with the right people. What are some of
Hmm.
those steps that you might have taken if you would have sort of like reversed the roles in terms of
Yeah.
getting like things rolling? You know what I mean?
Yeah, if I was in a small town, I think one of the first things I would have done, which is what I do everywhere I go, is
Mm,
build relationships with influential people. Like, so I would find, people who were visible. That could be a counselor, that could be a professor, that could be, the mayor. So being willing to what we call network up, right?
mm,
Network up. Connecting with people that are movers and shakers. Why? Because if they're moving and shaking and they're making things happen, if I connect with those people, then the likelihood that I'll become a mover and shaker is very high. So I think that would be the first thing, is just find people who are influencers in the city. And then what I would do, so knowing what I know now, I would focus on how can I help them first, right? So back
mm,
then it was what could I get first, right? Because I
right.
really didn't understand networking. I didn't really understand relationship building. I thought that if I can connect with that person, I can get something from them. But what I've learned over the years is that if I can focus on how can I help them, how can I serve them, then that'll open up doors for me to be able to grow and possibly do what they're doing if I'm interested in doing those things. So I think if a person's in a small town, I think the first and most important thing they can probably do, yeah, volunteer work, some type of volunteer work, community service, and then being able to connect with influencers that are making things happen so that they can learn how to grow as a person in their community.
No, that's so true. I like that advice because I feel like, I mean, a lot of people I know that even follow me, of course, from around the same, town and everything, they sort of
Yep.
feel as if there's not a lot of opportunity and they feel
Hmm.
that they necessarily have to move to a larger city, which, I mean, that's a possibility, but it's like,
Yeah. Yeah.
if you don't necessarily have like the finances or the funds at first, start with where
Right.
you are. And I know you're
Yeah.
big into like the BNI and everything too, right? Like
Yep.
the groups and
Yep.
things like that.
Yep. Yep.
I gotcha.
Yep.
Yeah, I
Yep. I
know.
think I think you're right. I think you got to start where you are. You know what? I'm gonna tell you what the biggest place for opportunity is the public library. I'm a firm believer. Like, that's the
Uh,
wealthiest place in our community outside of the cemetery, right? Outside of the
man,
cemetery,
that's
the
deep.
public library is the wealthiest place for people. I don't care where you grow up, because there's access to information, there's access to books, there's access to virtual mentors. I noticed you got the Power of One behind you. I think it's important that, when people read, it takes them to another place without them having to leave their physical location, right? So I think if a
Mm,
person is stuck in a town, it's a small town, and there's not a lot of a quote unquote opportunity, the best thing you could do is go to the library and pick up a couple of books. There's several books that I recommend people to read to help them develop their mindset and their skill set, and then begin to branch out from there. But to be able to say there's no opportunity, yeah, physically, like if I look around and my environment is nothing but poverty, then I could probably keep telling myself there's no opportunity. But if I go to the wealthiest place in the community, outside of the cemetery, if I go to the library and I begin to develop a habit for reading and studying and learning, then that can then take me to a place that I can then step out of that comfort zone and go seek out more opportunity, because opportunity is all around us. I'm telling you, but opportunity comes through people. So a lot of
mm,
people don't realize that opportunities come through people. I'm on this call with you because just a few years ago, I was willing to have a conversation with a guy that I didn't know, who opened up the door for me to talk to CJ, right? Who
right.
then challenged me to follow up, which then prompted me to travel 11, 12 hours to St. Louis for the Average Scale Phenomenal World Tour, driving from Richmond, Virginia to St. Louis, Missouri. And then the rest, was all over but the shouting. So opportunities come through people. But if you don't build those relationships and you don't know what you bring to the table, then it's difficult for you to attract those opportunities. So I'm a firm believer. I don't care if you come from a major city or a small town, opportunities are literally at your fingertips if you're willing to do your homework and look for them.
No, I believe that so much. I mean, I look at some of the connections that I've even gained over the years. Of course, with BU Breathe University being a big
Yep.
one. That was
Yep.
definitely the one that really set me out because it was
Yeah.
with like-minded people, and it really
Yeah.
got you sort of get you out of your comfort zone. It makes you want to travel. I mean, like you said, traveling to St. Louis. I mean,
Hmm.
that's not just a travel across the state.
No.
You
No.
go into through several
Yeah.
states. I mean, maybe
Yeah.
even more than that, just to go to a conference. And
Yeah.
man, no, I'm such a firm believer in that too, for real. And
Hmm.
of course, I like how you said, the graveyard, of course, and then the library. Those are the
Yeah.
two like the
Yeah.
richest
Yeah.
places to
Yep.
go to. And
Yep.
I believe in that so much because again, I mean, I got the books behind me. I've
Yeah.
read, and my goal this year was to read 30 books, right?
Nice.
But as of right now, I'm almost at 40.
Oh,
You know
love
what
it.
I'm saying?
Love it.
So it's
Love it.
like with me reading, you're developing, your vocabulary, you're developing
Yeah.
more of a stronger mentality, your
Yeah.
will, and you're learning so many different aspects, so many different perspectives of life, especially with biographies
Yeah.
from, everybody else's story. It's like you're shortening the learning curve, like
Yeah.
5 or 10 years. And I just,
Yeah.
I think it's incredible for sure. Just, continuing
Yeah.
to learn and things like that.
Yep.
Let's transition a little bit, YB. Let's talk about partnerships and things like
Yep.
that. I know that's
Hmm.
something that you're really big on and you're very passionate about talking about, like the power of partnerships.
Yeah.
Sort of elaborate for me, man. How
Hmm.
has the power of partnering and forming a partnership, whether it's with another person or another company, how has that
Hmm.
influenced your life up to this point?
Oh my goodness. So when you get into power, when you start talking about the power of partnership, one of the things you realize is that it expands your reach. So we talk about connecting, we talk about networking, but once you partner with someone, it gives you the opportunity to be in a position that you likely wouldn't have been in had you not connected with that person. I think when I think back on the different partnerships that I've created, the very first, the most important one that I'm in right now is the one with my wife, right? So my wife is literally my number one partner. Being able to connect with her as a result of being married to her, we created two beautiful daughters, which then expands our life and our ability to leave a legacy. Just different partnerships. Like the biggest one is with my guy, Marshall Fox of 120 Design Studio, recognizing that when he approached me about, doing my logo and doing my website, I was taking a risk. I didn't really know him, obviously, outside of BU, but I was willing to take that risk, as we talked about earlier. And he did such a phenomenal job that I couldn't do nothing else but to promote him to the people in my network. And then as a result, my man was able to attract 40 new clients in like 90 days. You know what I'm saying? And so, that partnership, that trust, that ability to grow, that mutualism that he talks about all the time, being able to understand, like, where do I fit in and how can I add value? And then how can you add value to me? Even now, like us being on this line, I mean, this is a partnership. Our ability to mesh our brands together. I'm sharing your content with my people, and you're sharing me with your people. I mean, there's a
Yeah.
lot that goes with that. And so I believe you can go further with partnerships than you can go by yourself. And I think that's why networking is so critical. The challenge, though, is that not a lot of people have been taught how to
Mm.
network effectively. And so that's where I come in. I fill that gap, to be able to teach people how to do that, but to do it with confidence, you know what I'm saying? And focus on giving. I learned from a gentleman named Dr. George Frazier, who's a prominent business owner, successful leader in America. He's been focusing on wealth creation and education within the Black community for over 40 years. And one of the things that he taught me was this definition of networking, which is the ability to connect with other people in such a way that you create mutual benefit, right? That you create mutual
Mm.
benefit, but it starts with you giving, right? So a
Okay.
lot of times people think networking is what can I get, but networking is what can I give. And so as you give and you sow those seeds, then you open the door for you to receive. And so I think those partnerships, as you start to develop those relationships, will lead to partnerships, which then lead to other things beyond partnership. So for me, there's tremendous power in partnerships and that are mutual, because you can go a lot further with partnerships than you can by yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes total sense. What,
Yeah.
what would you say is the biggest, because I mean, even myself, I have a business partnership, of course, within
Yep.
my marketing company, and
Mm-hmm.
it's just like a marriage,
Yep. Yep.
you definitely have to go through the trials and tribulations. So what would you say is one of the biggest, um, trying to think of the word, what would you say is one of the biggest like things in your opinion that you would say has to be balanced, to say the
Mm-hmm.
least? Maybe it's an attribute, maybe it's
Mm-hmm.
a feature. What would you say is that one thing that has to be like spot on every single day for that to
Yeah.
last?
Yeah. I say communication. I think the number one thing that a partnership has to have is communication. And now there may not be tremendous balance, right? So a lot of times people want things to be equal. So if I give two, you give two. And oftentimes a partnership is not like that. You feel what I'm saying?
Right.
Kendall, my coach, Kendall Ficklin, says it's not about equal giving, it's about equal sacrifice, right? And so at the end of the day, I may not be giving two, but my sacrifice is just as great as your sacrifice, right? So I think communication is the common thread that's going to make all partnerships work. One of the things that I've learned over the last 90 days as a result of getting more connected in the BU community, was this concept of studying the gorilla, right? So I don't know how many of your listeners know about the four animals, but I'm a flamingo, right? And so I bring the energy. But I had to learn from Eve to study the gorilla, right? Be willing to say no. Be willing to communicate up front the things that I want, so that I'm not disappointed on the back end because I really wanted something, but because I didn't communicate it, now I'm mad at myself. I'm mad at that person. So I'm learning to do that, and I'm actually executing that now, and it's helping me. It's helping me to conserve my energy. So I would say if there's one thing that a partnership thrives on, is communication. Saying what you need to say, and if there's a roadblock, working through it. But if you don't communicate, you really don't get very far in terms of progress. So I would say every partnership needs communication.
I gotcha. Let's say somebody's going through like a roadblock right now, right? Whether it's in
Yep.
their business, their
Mm-hmm.
marriage, or their
Mm-hmm.
relationship. Of
Mm-hmm.
course, like you said, communication is definitely key, but
Yep.
maybe the one partner is sort of scared to speak up, or they're
Yeah.
just a little bit fearful and I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. I don't want to offend
Yeah.
anybody. If
Yeah.
you were in that scenario, how would you
Yeah.
approach that situation?
I'm learning now, man. So with this, what the gorilla does, the gorilla don't give a rip about your feelings, right? So because I'm a flamingo, I used to be that guy. I don't want to say this because I don't want them to think I'm trying to hurt their feelings. I'm
Right.
studying the gorilla right now. I don't give a rip about your feelings, especially when we're doing business, because business is not about feelings. You know what I'm saying?
So
Business is
true.
about results. And so if you're in a business relationship, it's better for you to bring up the
Mm,
topic and get through that situation up front than to let it linger, because not only will it kill the business, but it'll kill the relationship. You feel what I'm saying? And my philosophy
yeah.
is relationship first, business second. So if I'm going to have a successful relationship, it's going to be incumbent upon me to communicate what I need in order to make that relationship work. So if I were in a situation with a partner and I was dealing with a roadblock, the first thing I would do is overcome that fear of what would that other person think. It's not about what they think. You know what I'm saying? It's about resolving the challenge that you're dealing with in the moment so you can move forward. You feel what I'm saying? It reminds
Yeah.
me, I don't know if you've seen the movie Superfly. Have you seen the movie
I haven't.
Superfly? Right. So there's
No.
a new movie out, Superfly. It's a remake of the old movie. And it's two guys that grew up and they're a bunch of drug dealers, and they're like brothers, right? And
Right.
so they had I'm not gonna give you the movie because I want you to go see it, right? But they
I
had a
got
little
you.
situation that caused them to have friction, right? And they were at the shooting range, and one of the guys, his name is Priest, had an issue with what his brother did in a certain situation, right? And so they talked about this concept of trust. And the guy and his brother was like, it's not about trust, man. It's about having each other's back. That's what trust is, right? Communicating with each other, making sure that we are on the same page. And so I use that example because that was a tough situation for those two, but the way that they overcame it was through communication. So I just think you lay it out. I think two things that you could do very well if you're in a tight spot. Number one, Focus on the challenge, right? Don't focus on 50 million other things. Focus on the challenge. And then number two, ask great questions, right? Because I could easily come in and just start stating how upset I am, and you did this and you did that. Or I could say, hey, Nate, let me ask you a question. This situation that took place happened X, Y, and Z. What was your rationale for doing that? Right? What was your reason for doing that? Like what? And by asking you questions, it will actually unravel the situation and help me to get a greater understanding, because it could be me. You know what I'm saying? The reason why we're in that situation, it could be me. I may have taken something the wrong way, but if I don't ask the right questions, I won't get to the heart of the matter. And I think that's the most important thing that you can do in a partnership when you're dealing with a struggle like that. Yeah, ask good questions.
No, that's I like that. Ask great questions. What do you think of the phrase? Because I know I like to talk a lot about mentors as well, right?
Yep.
What do you think of the phrase? Like no question is, I forget how it goes, but like no question is a stupid question, or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
What do you think of
I
that phrase?
So I actually use that in my talks. If I'm dealing with college students, I always say no question is a stupid question unless the question that you're about to ask was asked 2 minutes before you asked it.
Oh, I got you. Yeah.
You feel what I'm saying? So like if I'm in a class with you and we're talking and you ask me the question, or you ask the speaker the question, Mr. Speaker, what's 1 + 1? Right? And then I ask the question right after and say, Mr. Speaker, what is 1 + 1? Like for me, if I'm the speaker, I'm gonna look at you and I'm gonna say, listen, did you just hear the question that was at? Like, so it wouldn't be so much a stupid question versus you not paying attention and you asking the same question that somebody else just asked, right? I think in order to get to the truth, you've got to be willing to ask questions. And sometimes one thing I like to do, there's a character named Columbo. I don't know if you ever heard of Columbo, right? So Columbo would always ask questions that he knew the answer to, right? And the reality is that the reason why I do that is I want to get perspective. I may already know the answer, but I need to know how you answer the question. You feel me? One of the things that my wife does, it kind of drives me up the wall sometimes, but because we've been together almost 15 years, it's like I deal with it, right? So she loves to ask me questions. Like I would ask her a question and she won't answer the question. She'll ask me how I feel about it first. And then when I give her the answer, she says, you know what? I was thinking the same thing. I'm like, nah, I don't like when you do that. Right. When I need you to tell me how you feel independent of what I feel, right? But my wife is a master of that. I'll say, well, sweetie, what do you think about that? She said, well, what do you think about that? I'm like, no, I'm asking you. Like, I want to know what you think. She said, no, well, I want to know what you think. So we end up going back and forth. So I end up saying what I think. And then she's like, you know what? I was thinking the same thing. I'm like, come on, man. Like, no, you wasn't.
Right, she like flips the script.
Yeah, she like to flip the script, man. I'm glad she's not here right now, so I can talk about it. But, you know what I'm saying? But no, but I think at the end of the day, there's no such thing as a stupid question. I think people just need to get to the truth, and I think you'll learn to understand the importance of questions when you have kids. Right? I have a 10-year-old and I have an 8-year-old. I'm not gonna say to my kids that's a stupid question, because I'm gonna hurt their self-esteem, right? Yeah. Now, I may ask them a question like, what do you mean by that? Or I might say, like I have an 8-year-old, she's very inquisitive. I'll say, sweetie, what was my answer the last time you asked that question?
Oh, that's good.
You feel what I'm saying? Because what I want to get her to do is I want her to think before she speaks.
Yeah.
I want her to think before she speaks. So sometimes people just be talking. They just be asking questions just to be talking. I'm like, you don't want to ask questions just to be talking. Think about what you need and then ask the question. And then when you ask the question so that the answer has something to do with you. Don't just throw questions out there just to talk.
Right.
You know? So, yeah.
Yeah, that's like a bunch of nonsense if people just do that. And then back to like the whole I like how you said that. Like if somebody asks, what's 1 + 1, then the other person does. I mean, you got a listening problem then. You got to work
Yeah,
on. You feel me? Because I mean,
yeah,
shoot,
absolutely,
nah, yeah,
absolutely,
yeah,
absolutely.
man. I like that. I like that
Absolutely.
answer.
And
So
now,
let
and
me.
now that I'm studying this gorilla, bro, I don't know. I think my response might be a little different now. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, I don't mean to be disrespectful, but my man just asked the same question. So here's what I need you to do: ask my man the question. Don't ask me the question because I just gave the answer. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to be disrespectful, but I may respond like that in a meeting. You know what I mean? They be like, "Man, you hard on people, Rob." I said, "No, I just think you got a listening problem." So
Right.
yeah, and I learned
Oh
this a
man.
long time. I learned this from my mentor. He told me, one of my mentors said, "You can say anything with a smile, right? Like you big dummy, like you big dummy." And people be
Right.
like, "I know you offended me, but you smiling, so that must mean that I should be smiling too." You know what I mean? So yeah,
That's so true. That's
yeah.
psychological behind it.
Oh yeah. Oh, no question. No question.
Man, so let me ask you this, YB, more so on a networking question.
Uh huh.
So
Yeah.
let's say somebody, is a little bit fearful of going to like a networking event, for
Yeah.
example.
Yeah.
So for me, right, like growing up, I wasn't surrounded around like going to a bunch of events, right? My family,
Yeah.
they're more closed and things like that.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that's a bad
Yeah.
thing. That's just how I was raised,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
Naturally
Mm-hmm.
introverted and
Yep.
everything like that. How would you recommend somebody that might be, introverted to
Mm-hmm.
sort of like take that leap of faith, even though that they
Yeah.
know they should, but they're like, man,
Yeah.
I can't, man. It's the same thing with
Yeah.
the gym. Like
Yeah.
people don't go to the gym because they have that little fear. So what would you
Yeah.
recommend to somebody that is more so shy to actually
Yeah.
take that leap? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. So I first want to say I love working with introverts. Like most of my
Ooh,
clients are introverts. So that's number
uh,
one. Number two, introverts make better networkers. That's
ooh,
that's just a fact. Because introverts do the one thing that extroverts don't like to do, and that's listen. Right? Extroverts want to talk all day. Introverts want to be quiet. So that's the second thing. The third thing is just be prepared. I think if you are serious about growing, let's say a business or being successful in school even, I think the most important thing to do is get a coach, right?
okay.
Find somebody who is strong in that area that can teach you some tricks and help you to increase your confidence. I think the value of a coach is that a coach helps you to grow in your confidence, right? So for example, if I didn't know how to play golf and I got a tournament coming up, the first thing I would do is go get me a coach. I'm not going to embarrass myself and go on the tournament and I not even know how to swing the golf club. I would just embarrass myself. So I would probably be afraid to go because I didn't know what I was doing. So I would go ahead and invest in a coach. But I think once you get that, then I think the key after that is asking those good questions and being prepared. So there are a couple of questions that I recommend my clients who are introverts and extroverts, but mostly introverts, to ask, right? So first of all, be prepared when you go into the environment. Like know why you're going. Like have a reason why you're going to the event, right? So it's either because you want to get more information, it's because you're looking for new clients, it's because you might be looking for a job. So be specific as to why you're going to this meeting, right? So that's the first thing. The second thing is identify who do I need to be connecting with, because you don't want to go and talk to everybody. You feel me? So I would so maybe talk to the organizer of the meeting and say, well, who's going to be there? Who's going to be at this meeting, right? And then after you find out who's going to be there, make a list of about 5 or 6 people that you would want to meet, all right?
Mm,
And then by doing that, it saves you time. Now, when you get to the event, because you've already communicated with the organizer, ask the organizer in advance, hey, I have a list of people that I like to meet while I'm here. Could you help me connect to these people? Like, I don't know who they are, but can you introduce me? Can you open up some doors? The meeting planner would love to do that. Why? Because your success is their success, if that makes sense,
mm,
right? And so then once you get in front of a person, these are the questions, a sequence of questions that I often like to ask people or encourage my clients to ask. The first one is, where are you from? Right? Because everybody's from someplace. So if you and I were in a situation where we were building and we first met, the very first question I would ask you, Nate, is where are you from? right? And you would tell me where you're from. Now you say Pennsylvania, right? So I say, okay, is that in central Pennsylvania or is that in western Pennsylvania, right? And you would respond, and then I would find something that had a common connection. So if it was in central Pennsylvania, I would say, you know what? I actually used to visit central PA often. I used to work with a nonprofit organization, and I used to travel to Penn State, which is in central PA, right? And you say, oh, yeah, my cousin went to Penn State. So then what happens is we would start building on that common thread, which was what? Central PA. You feel what I'm saying? Another question I would ask is, what kind of work do you do? Like, well, what's your background? Like, what kind of work do you do? You might say, well, I'm in marketing. I said, oh, okay, well, that's good. I said, I'm in marketing as well. What kind of marketing? So then I would go deeper in the question. A third question would be, what are you looking to accomplish by being at this networking event? You know what I'm saying? Like, what are you looking to accomplish? Like, why? Because why would you be at an event if you don't have a purpose? Unless you just came to drink up all of the beverages and eat up all of the snacks. You feel what I'm saying? And then the last question that I would ask is, so based on that question, the response that I get from question number 3, the last question would be, what kind of help do you need in this season? Now, what kind of help do you need in this season? And the reason why I asked that question, think about the definition of networking. Let's go back a little bit. Networking is the ability to connect in such a way that you create mutual benefit, but it starts with you giving. So if I ask the question, what help do you need in this season, right? Then now I get to listen to the challenge that you have, and I might be able to help you, or I might know someone that can help you, therefore adding value to the connection. You feel what I'm saying? And so when a person, so now you don't just jump out of bed if you're an introvert and start doing that, right? That's why you need a coach, right? There's a lot of role play involved when I work with my clients. But what I recognize is that when you're prepared, not only do you build trust faster because you're willing to listen, but a lot more doors will open up for you if you know what questions to ask. As a matter of fact, I have a client right now who started out tremendously introverted, and now she's the president of our BNI chapter. She didn't really like to speak before. Now she has speaking gigs booked all the way through December. Her business is growing tremendously. And she often wants to give me the credit. I say, well, listen, you were just a good student. You were just willing to listen to the tips that I gave you. And she applied those things, and now she's having success.
Wow. I mean, that's incredible. And just with those tangible action steps that you just laid out there.
Yeah, and it's very simple. So there's a book out there called The Slight Edge. And The Slight Edge talks about that. If you do the small things over time, it'll equal the big things. They're easy to do, but they're also easy not to do. So those tips that I gave, they're easy to do, but they're also easy not to do. And so and now having a coach will help you to remain accountable to that process. Because if you lift it up to yourself, you're like, I'm not doing this, man. This is not comfortable to me, right? I don't feel comfortable. Well, who says being successful is supposed to be comfortable? It's not.
Yeah, it's not.
Matter of fact, you have to be comfortable with being what? Uncomfortable.
Yeah.
You feel what I'm saying? And so when people start to do the things that make them uncomfortable, that's when you start to achieve tremendous success.
No, that makes so much sense. I mean, I think one of the biggest reasons is because people just, they feel that they don't have a plan or a blueprint to actually go make it happen. And I feel like that is one thing that just holds them back so much, is because they just feel, oh, well, I know I should do it, but how do I do it? You know, and with you laying out those steps, of course, like with a blueprint and having like a coach, I think for the listeners and the viewers, I think that's a perfect example. And it doesn't just have to be like within like a networking community. Maybe, for example, I just interviewed on my last episode a painter, right? So maybe if you're a painter, if you're looking to get more, into painting sculptures or creating sculptures or maybe with clay, I mean, shoot, maybe it's finding, a mentor. Maybe it's, reading books or things like that, watching videos. And no, I like that. I like that, YB. I like how you said that and sort of broke that down, because I feel like it definitely gives, like you were saying, more of a perspective, right? Because everything everything comes down to a perspective, which is why you, like you said, you sort of ask questions, even though you might already know them,
Yep.
but you just want to know what their perspective is, which is why,
Yep.
people also read biographies
Yep.
to get like what Steve Jobs' perspective is, which is what Arnold Schwarzenegger's perspective was, to sort of break things down
Yeah.
easier. Man, I'm glad you said that. Yeah, I like that.
Yep.
Heck
Yep.
yeah, man.
Yep. And I
Heck
think
yeah.
when you get perspective, it adds value to your thought process. It
Right.
adds value to your thought process. So I think perspective gives you a different way of looking at it. One of the best things I love when I talk to somebody is when they say, I never thought about it like that before.
Oh,
Right? I
yeah.
never thought about it like that before. So when somebody says that, that means that my words have given them, have touched something on the inside of them that they never really given thought. And so what that means is that they've gained a new perspective on a certain topic. Feel what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
I love it. And I'm definitely excited about, being able to help change people's perspective. Because, so for example, right now, as I'm looking at you, I could see what's behind you, right? And right now, as you're looking at me, you can see what's behind me. So by being able to share your perspective, you can empower me on the things that I can't see. And I can
Right.
empower you on the things that you can't see. And so as
Gotcha.
we begin to do that, as you get perspective, then you get like this 360-degree perspective. You feel what I'm saying? So that way you're not missing anything. You're not missing a beat.
Man, that's so true. Let me ask you this, YB.
Yeah. Yeah.
So in terms of partnerships,
Mm-hmm.
do you believe that, and let's stay more so within the business realm of things. So
Yep.
with a business
Yep.
partnership, do you think
Mm-hmm.
everybody needs to have a business partnership? And I guess why? Why would you believe yes or no to that?
Yeah, I think everybody needs a business partnership.
I got
Even
you.
when you think about your banker, like you got to have a partnership with your banker. You know what I'm saying? You got to have a
Right.
partnership with, your mortgage broker. You know what I'm saying? Like those are. So when I think about partnership, so there's different degrees of partnership. You feel what I'm
Okay.
saying? Like I wouldn't tell my banker my deepest, darkest secrets. I mean, his whole purpose or her whole purpose is to help me with my bread, help me with my money, right?
Right. Right.
But there's certain parts, so there's different levels of partnership. So I think everybody needs a partner or should have partners because, like I said earlier, you move forward faster with the right partners. You feel what I'm saying? Now the key is to find, that's the key word, is the right partners. Not just
Yeah.
getting in partnership with everybody just because you think is no, you got to check your references. You got to check the results, because if you're not equally connected, that can drain you. Reminds me of when I heard the story about how, when one car is drained and you bring your new car in that's got a good battery and you attach it to the old battery, what it does is it sucks the energy from the new battery. You feel what I'm saying? And so
Yeah.
being in a partnership where the people are not equally connected could destroy you because it's not even. You feel me? It's not equal. But people know that when they get in the door, but they choose not to acknowledge it. And I think it's important to acknowledge those things first, see what that person brings to the table, and know what you bring to the table, and then bring those things to the table to create a mega partnership that leads both of you to the next level and not set back.
No, absolutely. And again, it comes back to like what you were saying earlier with communication,
Yep.
having those conversations, having and asking those really good and great questions to
Yeah.
actually, if you are unbalanced, like, if one's here and then one's here, how can we both get on the same accord and come together? Heck
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely,
Yeah.
man. I
Yeah.
like that. Yeah, I like that answer. So, man,
Yeah.
sort of, um, I definitely want to value your time, of course, and I appreciate all the value that you dropped so far.
Mhm.
Where can I know you're big on LinkedIn, of course.
Yeah.
Where can people find you on, of course, LinkedIn and just general social media? Maybe you have a
Yeah.
website.
Yeah, so they can catch me at yourlinkedinlocksmith.com. So if they just put that in their browser, that'll take them right to my LinkedIn profile, yourlinkedinlocksmith.com. I'm actually in the process of building that out, but I use the the domain name to help go right to my LinkedIn profile, just to make it easier, because the LinkedIn link, sometimes could be a little confusing. So your LinkedInlocksmith.com. So that's the first place. Then they can connect with me at ybconnects.com. That's my company page. So they can find me there, and that'll actually open up the door for them to connect with me on all of the other social media platforms. And so if somebody wanted to connect, they could hit me at yourlinkedinlocksmith.com. And what I would say is that if a person does connect with me on LinkedIn, make sure to send me a personalized note so they can say, hey, I heard you on Nate's show. I'm interested in learning more about how to, get better at networking or communication or, LinkedIn. Send a personalized note, because I think when it comes to LinkedIn, a lot of times people want to connect, but they don't give a reason for why they want to connect, right? They just hit the connect button thinking that, oh, that person's going to want to connect with me. No, time is money, right? And money is time. So if you are connecting with me, there's got to be a purpose behind us connecting. It can't just be, well, I like your page, or we have multiple connections, so let's connect. Now, that's not good enough reason for me personally to connect with anybody. I need to know, okay, hey, I saw some of the things that you do, and I'm interested in learning more, or I think you can help me, or I think I can help you. But don't just connect with people just to connect on social media. Specifically LinkedIn. But that's how people can connect with me. Yourlinkedinlocksmith.com and ybconnects.com are the two best ways that they can access me.
I gotcha. Yeah, as you guys can see, YB's very knowledgeable with LinkedIn. He definitely breaks down like the blueprint to cracking like the LinkedIn code, obviously like with the locksmith. But yeah, man, I'll attach the links in the description below for the viewers and the audience. That way they can go click it. And then at the end of every episode, YB always have the guest end it on, obviously a great note, but an execution note is what I like to call it, right? Because it's one thing, and you've already dropped a lot, right? So maybe it's something that we've already highlighted, or maybe it's just something else, like a short little nugget. What is that one execution note for the viewers, the listeners, and the audience listening in right now? What would that one little tip be to go out and execute on?
If you don't mind, I want to give three, if that's okay.
Yeah,
let me give
that's
three.
Perfect. Yeah.
the first one is focus on understanding than being understood. Right? Mm-hmm. Focus on understanding. So what does that mean? That means ask good questions. Like whenever you approach people and you're out there networking, focus on how can you understand people. Right? Read books like How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. Right? There's a phenomenal book called Skill with People. Very short book. I would encourage your listeners to read Skill with People by Les Giblin. So focus on understanding versus being understood, right? So once you focus on understanding, it'll open up the door for people to be understood. The second thing I would say is develop strong partnerships, right? Identify people who have things that you might be lacking, but identify what you have that they might need, right? Because it should mesh together. It shouldn't be like this. It should mesh together. So identify people that you can add value to. Look for people that can add value to you, but focus on giving first, and then leverage the power of partnerships. And then third, I would say this, man. Everybody needs to be on LinkedIn. I'm gonna just be honest with you. If you have a business, if your goal is to grow your personal brand, you need to be on LinkedIn. Instagram is great. Facebook is phenomenal, but LinkedIn is the place for business. Now, most people might say, well, I don't know if I want to get on LinkedIn. It's tough to navigate. That's why you got the LinkedIn locksmith. You feel what I'm saying? I'm only a click away. So don't let that be an excuse for why you're not maximizing the platform. Get active on LinkedIn. Start promoting, start connecting, start building relationships. But get on LinkedIn now, because it's definitely the place to be able to develop those quality professional and business relationships. So those would be the three things, the three action items that I would recommend to your listeners.
No, absolutely. LinkedIn's like that untouched market almost, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So over almost 600 million people, about a third are active on there, which means about 400 million are not. So there's 600 million on there. Almost 2/3 are not active, which means there's a lot of ground to cover. And I'm on a mission. My mission is to activate 1 million LinkedIn users within the next 3 years. As a matter of fact, I'm doing that I'm launching my first Level Up LinkedIn webinar, which is coming up on August 15th at 7:30 p.m. So if folks want to learn more about that, they can definitely get that information from me if they're interested, or I can send it to you and you can share that with your listeners. But that's just my thing, is it's helping people level up on LinkedIn. Why? Because if you level up on LinkedIn, you start to establish a strong professional relationship, right? Once you develop strong professional relationships, then you get a different perspective. And once you get a different perspective, you start making different moves. And once you start making different moves, you change your situation. Right? You're a perfect example of that, Nate. You know what I'm saying? You got in an environment where you started to learn, you got a different perspective, and then you started taking different actions, and now you're getting different results, and you're making so many different moves, man. So I just think that once you get into a different environment, different perspective, learn from people, make different moves, and you change your results. Because my mission right now is literally to eradicate poverty mentality. That's my mission. You feel me? To eradicate it. And not to say that I'm, talking bad or talking down on people who might be poor. I just think that when you develop your greatest asset, right? Your greatest asset is this. When you develop this, everything else opens up for you. And that's why I say that the library is one of the wealthiest places in our community, because it's free. You feel what I'm saying? It's free. You don't have to pay no money to go to the public library to get information to develop the most valuable asset that you have. When you develop that asset, it opens up so many doors for you that you won't have to worry about being broke again, because broke is a mentality. You know what I'm saying? Broke is a mentality. Poverty mentality is real, but it's not. It has nothing to do with money. It has everything to do with mindset.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's YB. Nah, man, YB, I definitely appreciate your time, man. Appreciate
My
you
pleasure, brother.
dropping the value and the gems, and most importantly, the actionable steps. That's definitely something that I feel the audience could use. So as always, man, definitely appreciate you, brother.
Appreciate you, man. Keep doing what you're doing, and I look forward to you having me back sometime next year when I drop my first book. So definitely would love to be back. But thank you for allowing me to be on your show. Keep doing what you're doing, and I welcome the opportunity to add more value to you as we continue to build.
Likewise, brother. We'll talk soon.
All right, sounds like a plan. Be encouraged.